Are we ready to start the Judiciary Committee? Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. Will the clerk call the roll for the members of the Judiciary Committee?
Senator Norment, Senator Lucas, Senator Obenshain, Senator McDougall, Senator Stewart, Senator Stanley, Senator Chafin, Senator Deeds, Senator Peterson, Senator Serval, Senator McClellan, Senator Boysko, Senator Morrissey, Senator Edwards.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here, the number of people in Zoom land, and I hope we can cover all these bills today through 12 o'clock. If not, we'll have to come back. But in any event, I'd like to take the privilege of calling the first bill, which is my bill. It's the Crisis Intervention Team program that's to be expanded statewide. It's Senate Bill 5014. Senate Bill 5014. I want to, first of all, offer a substitute to the bill. Will the Council, first of all, is there a motion to adopt the substitute? I make the motion. Senator Deeds seconds it. All in favor of the motion to adopt the substitute, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Will the clerk, rather the Council, explain what the substitute is compared with the original bill? This is the Crisis Intervention Team program, which I will point out I think is very popular. The Chief of Police of Roanoke County called me, says he supports it, the Chiefs of Police support it, and I don't know of any major opposition. But
Mr. Chairman,
the substitute does take care of some issues. Yes,
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Obenshain.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Stewart, you can't. The substitute is not available online as of right now.
Okay, substitute's not available online.
No, I can't get it either, Your Honor. Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the substitute should be posting momentarily. It should be up online right now.
It's there now.
Okay, it's there now.
Sometimes technology does take a couple extra seconds.
Technology has its benefits, and sometimes it doesn't work. Okay, it's the substitute. It's Senate Bill 1014. 5014. Senate Bill 5014. It essentially expands the Crisis Intervention Team program statewide. The substitute deals with some issues that came up. Council, could you explain the substitute?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So the main part of the substitute is going to be on lines 274 essentially through 278. And the substitute, I think, just clarifies the original intent of the introduced bill. Basically, it specifies that there are 3 categories of training that law enforcement will receive for this crisis intervention team training. And the first category is, or first bucket, if you will, is that there'll be some training for compulsory minimum training standards for prior to employment. Then there's a second category or bucket, which will make some form of training for basic training and recertification for all law enforcement. And then there is a third category or bucket for training for all persons involved in the crisis intervention team programs. It's my understanding that the crisis intervention team program training is a 40-hour training. So the idea is that the law enforcement officers who are not part of the team would receive, categories or buckets 1 and 2, which would be something of a lesser training than 40 hours. Obviously, that training will be decided by the Department of Criminal Justice Services and the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services, along with some other stakeholders. But the idea was to have law enforcement have some sort of crisis intervention training throughout law enforcement. And then the next addition to the bill is on lines 277 and 278, which basically specifies that every locality shall either establish or be part of another established crisis intervention team program. So if there's a locality that is rather small or may not have all of the services, they can still join up with other localities to have one crisis intervention team that would cover their locality and any other localities in that area.
Mr. Chair,
Okay, Senator Deeds.
I just have a question for council. The other day, out of this committee, we passed Senator Locke's bill that was more comprehensive police training, police reform bill, and I wondered whether this legislation had any conflict with that legislation.
Mr. Chairman, to answer Senator Deeds' question, there is no conflict. The training is different, so there is no conflict between the two of them. The department can basically this legislation and Senate Bill 5030 authorizes the department to come up with the training. So still I'll say the meats and bones of what the training is, it relies with the department's authority.
Okay, Mr. Chair,
Senator Deeds.
I wondered if this bill, if the choice of this committee is ultimately to report this bill, will have to go to finance, because it seems to me there is some cost to additional training.
I think it probably will. Is that true, counsel?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Finance has requested this bill.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Obenchain?
Stewart,
Senator Stewart?
following up on Senator Deeds' question, are we going to provide funding to the localities, both the counties and the towns and cities, for this, since it's a mandate on them and they're kind of struggling right now? Unless they could use CARES Act money, and I don't know the answer to that.
Counsel?
Mr. Chairman, as far as I know, that there is no money in the bill. If it's the committee, that language could always be taken out of the bill, not to require a mandate. But as far as I'm aware, no request for money or any budget amendment or I suppose any costs associated with this, because I don't know if any localities have submitted a cost request for it.
Yeah, Senator Deeds.
Mr. Chairman,
The Finance Committee has to decide how this is going to be how it's going to be funded. Ultimately, Senator Stewart's exactly right. It's going to cost some money, and it's whether the state or the locality pays it. And if the state doesn't fund it, it's basically a mandate that we'll have to take up in finance.
That's right. We'll send it to finance.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Senator Stewart?
I bring this up because I know there's another round of CARES Act money going out to the localities, and there wasn't very much guidance with the CARES Act money. And I don't know if we could somehow address this, because it may be utilized for that. I don't know. That's why I bring it up.
Okay, thank you. Without any further questions about the bill, I'd like to call, I understand Victoria Cochran is online by Zoom. She is a good friend of mine from Blacksburg. I call her the mother of the CIT program. She was Deputy Secretary of Public Safety and Homeland Security in the prior administration, and she's the one that behind getting this started in the New River Valley. It's been extraordinarily popular. About 2/3 of localities have CIT programs, and I'd like to have her be the first speaker. Victoria Cochran, are you there?
Victoria, if you could unmute your mic.
Victoria?
I am unmuted now. I'm so sorry. I'm on my phone and I'm not used to doing Zoom on the phone. I found the microphone. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of this committee, for taking my public testimony on the matter of CIT. My name is Victoria Cochran. I'm the former Deputy Secretary for Public Safety and Homeland Security under Governor Terry McAuliffe, former State Coordinator for Criminal Justice and Behavioral Health in the Kane and McDonnell administrations. I led the development of Virginia's first CIT program in the New River Valley and subsequent statewide expansion. I've helped localities develop many other kinds of jail diversion programs and served as a public defender in Southwest Virginia for nearly 20 years. Since 2001, CIT programs have grown across the state. This evidence-based, nationally implemented program developed in Memphis, Tennessee in 1988 has been used to train a special cadre of law enforcement officers within a police or sheriff's department or across several agencies in a given locality to identify when people are in crisis with mental health, substance use, brain injury, or developmental disability, and then to de-escalate these often emotionally charged and challenging situations. These programs are a partnership with local mental health and health service providers, as well as community members who are all part of the team, the T in CIT programs. These programs provide the skills and services that allow officers, our first responders, to appropriately redirect people to services and away from incarceration. This helps both the individuals involved, eases over incarceration, and keeps our communities safer. As was pointed out, the full CIT program requires 40 hours of training in which all the partners learn to work together, learning about mental illness, de-escalation techniques, available services in the community, and commitment laws. They then spend many hours practicing these skills under the watchful eye of specially trained officers and mental health professionals in their program from across Virginia. And while CIT programs are an ideal mechanism to address the individual and systemic problems that arise when we respond to individuals with mental illness, not every law enforcement agency has CIT. But every officer in Virginia should have CIT skills. Every officer should be able to identify when a behavioral health issue is at play when they are in the field, whether they are looking at someone in crisis who is contemplating suicide, experiencing hallucinations or hearing voices, suffering from PTSD, or living with a developmental disability and acting out. Every officer should have basic training in de-escalation techniques in these situations. And they're not just useful for persons in crisis, but to calm bystanders and family members who may become escalated, frightened, angry, or emotional in these sometimes fraught situations. These skills should be required for every law enforcement in the Commonwealth as part of basic training and for recertification. Why? Because they are the front line. They get there first. They need to keep themselves and the public safe. And these skills, these tools in their tool belt, can mean the difference between providing services or providing incarceration, between safety and harm. Ultimately, it is about more than behavioral health. I've helped train hundreds of officers in CIT programs since 2004. The skills they learn and the relationships enhanced throughout the community exemplifies 21st century community policing at its best.
Mr. Chairman.
And while not every department...
Let's let these speakers speak, and then we'll take
Mr. Chairman, does this
questions.
bill have any opposition?
Go ahead, Victoria.
Yes, sir. And while not, I'm almost done, actually. And while not every department has CIT, the core skills of the program can be beneficial to everyone. Officers have told me many stories of how they use their CIT skills in situations from traffic stops to hostage negotiations and domestic disputes with their own friends and family when sometimes things get heated. Especially in this current climate, we must prioritize providing our law enforcement officers with the skills that will make them safe and our communities confident that law enforcement will respond to their friends and loved ones with compassion, professionalism, and skill. Core CIT training will help make this so. Statewide CIT programs will cement the deal, and I urge you to pass SB 5014.
Okay, thank you very much. The next speaker is Devin Cabot.
They've dropped off, Senator.
I'm sorry. Okay. Are there any other speakers with regard
Mr.
to
Chair.
this bill? Senator Deeds.
I move we report and refer to finance.
Been moved and seconded that the bill 1050-14 be reported and referred to finance. Senator Stewart?
Can I ask one question before you do that?
Yes, please.
The only reason I ask this is because I just got an email from someone I very much respect in law enforcement who's a great supporter of this program, and I want to make sure I understand it. Does this compel all officers to be trained in this or just some, a team?
As the way I read the substitute, this is why it was changed to a substitute. There are three categories. First, there's compulsory minimum training subsequent to employment as a law enforcement officer. Number two, as part of a basic training and recertification requirements. And three, as part of training for all persons involved in CIT. Every locality shall establish or be part of a crisis intervention team program in accordance with this bill.
I wasn't clear, Mr. Chairman, if that requires all officers to be trained in the CIT or just a special few.
It requires eventually all of them. There's also a team program, but there's compulsory training at a minimal level in addition to the team program, which is more involved.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Qualiato here. I was just to echo your response. It would require all law enforcement to receive some sort of training, and it would be up to the department to figure out how that training fits in with the current training standards. So what I would say is the bill doesn't necessarily contemplate that there will be additional hours needed, just that the current training will need to have some sort of component of a crisis intervention training, if that answers Senator Stewart's question.
That is your question, Senator Stewart?
I think so, Mr. Chairman. The reason I brought that up, I've actually got an email from a gentleman in my district who leads the statewide training for the crisis intervention team. And he has some concerns about the fact that all officers may not be capable of this, and that there are some that are capable of doing it and some that are not. In other words, it may be a level of advanced training that we should not compel all officers to have, which makes sense to me. And I'm wondering if we could somehow make this where you have to have a team in each locality that is capable of responding and capable of passing the training. And then maybe just minimum first aid for every officer. I don't know, but something along those lines.
Senator, I think that's what it does, Senator. Am I correct, counsel? That's what it does?
Mr. Chairman and Senator Stewart, I would answer, that's what the bill does. The people who get the, I'll say the complete advanced training are the people on the team. There would be lesser training, or the bill contemplates lesser training for other law enforcement officers. So it could be first aid, it could be just, some basic, how to recognize, some mental health issues, but it would not be the advanced training that the team members would receive.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved and seconded that the bill be reported and re-referred to finance. Call the roll.
Senator Saslaw, Senator Norment, Senator Lucas, Senator Obenshain, Senator McDougal, Senator Stewart, Senator Stanley, Senator Chafin, Senator Deeds, Senator Peterson, Senator Serval, Senator McClellan, Senator Boysko, Senator Morrissey, Senator Edwards.
Aye.
Ayes 12, no 0.
Okay, motion carries. Now, thank you all very much. Moving on now to the next bill. It's Senator Morrissey's bill, Senate Bill 507. We're going to try to get down the list here in some kind of numerical order. Senator Morrissey's bill, Senate Bill 5007. Senator Morrissey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, at the beginning, I would like to make a motion to strike lines 100 through 146 of my bill. That is the bill dealing with fiscal impact. It's taken up in another bill that we heard the other day. It becomes unnecessary, and with your permission, I'd hope that we could get a motion in a second.
Is there a motion? So moved by, okay, whose name is this? Morrissey made the motion, several seconded. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Senator
Chairman,
Morrissey. Yes, Senator Obenshain.
if I could just ask, what were those lines again that were deleted?
Certainly. Senator Obenshain, if you look at the PFD file, it's lines 100 through the end of the bill, 146.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Chairman, this bill, as you recall, came up in the Senate last year, and it had a fairly robust debate both in this committee and in the body, and it passed last year with bipartisan support. This bill is generically known as the Sentencing Reform Bill, and its primary component is that in a criminal case, a defendant would be able to avail himself of the constitutional right to a jury trial, and if found guilty, request that the judge do the sentencing. I'm going to be brief and not rehash what everybody in this room heard last year, but you recall the numbers that in in the United States, 44 states have jury trial, judge sentencing, and Virginia is one of 6 outlier states. The federal system, of course, has jury trial and judge sentencing. This bill also provides 2 other things: that if a jury cannot agree on a punishment, the court shall declare a mistrial. And the bill also provides that if the attorney for the Commonwealth may not demand a jury trial when there's a state order declaring a judicial emergency like a pandemic. The reason for that is as follows. Requesting throughout the Commonwealth, jury trials have been put off until the pandemic is over, or at least under control. And if a Commonwealth's attorney were to demand a jury trial during an emergency, it would prevent the defendant from getting his day in court. So let me just make a couple of other points, and then I'll, Mr. Chairman, answer any questions if I can. I have reached out to folks on the other side, and the primary concern appears to be that it will cost more money. And at first blush, intuitively, that would be correct. A defendant would say, listen, I'll take my shot at a jury trial, which I'm entitled to, but then have the judge sentence. And while there may be an uptick in juries initially, what will end up happening is that plea agreements that are offered by the prosecution will be more commensurate with the actual charge. I don't know if I said this during last year, but there is a matrix of states that have this, and interestingly, and not surprisingly, in 2 states, Connecticut and Nebraska, where they have jury trials and judge sentencing, they have 2 of the lowest percentage rates of jury trials in the country. And the converse is true with Arkansas. So any suggestion that it will increase cost because you're going to increase the number of juries is simply false and is not borne out by the statistics. Mr. Chairman, I think that is it. I don't want to, I know we have lots of bills to cover, but I'll try to answer any questions if I can.
Mr. Chairman.
Questions? Who's this?
Stanley.
Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'd ask the gentleman, the patron from Richmond, if he looks on lines 83 and 84 of his bill, and he has stated this in his summary of the bill, that if the jury cannot agree on a punishment where the jury has been chosen to not only to determine guilt or innocence, but also punishment, if they cannot agree on punishment, he then declares under his bill a mistrial of the trial entirely, which would then vacate the guilty verdict that was found by the jury. I would ask the gentleman, has he considered, since the main thrust of this bill was to, when possible, take the sentencing out of the jury's hands, why would it be a mistrial and not then default to the judge to do the sentencing, thereby preserving the verdict, at least, of the jury?
Mr. Chairman, I thank Senator Stanley for that question. First of all, the Commonwealth, the defense could agree that the judge could sentence, but here is the reason for that language, Senator. If the defendant opts to have the jury try or sentence the individual, the way things are done right now, the current law, as a result of legislation that was passed in March 7th of 2012, would require the judge to declare a mistrial, but have a new jury solely for the purpose of punishment and not for guilt or innocence. And although that I am not aware of a single time that that has happened, here is the potential problem. The jury cannot reach or agree upon a verdict. A new jury is impaneled simply for punishment, and they have not sat through the entire jury trial. The best that they would be able to get would be a summary of what took place. Kind of like, you can't watch the movie, but let me just give you a summary of what Gone with the Wind was about. And it would be detrimental to a defendant to not have the jury that is sentencing him, perhaps to decades in prison, to have actually heard all of the facts.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I understand in what he's eliminated in lines 81 through 83, which is taking away the impaneling of a new jury that hasn't heard the case. My question then is, if the defendant chooses the jury to determine guilt or innocence and then also the punishment, and then it doesn't agree, you were just talking about how this is not going to be an added cost, but declaring a mistrial when the jury has unanimously found somebody guilty, and then if they can't agree on a punishment, defaulting to the judge that was there and saw the whole thing, why can't that be the way so that we're not wasting taxpayer money on a whole new trial of guilt or innocence just because the jury couldn't figure out how to punish the person after the finding of guilt?
Again, because the defendant has opted to have the jury do the sentencing. I believe there's no doubt that if, in this case, most defendants who have been found guilty by a jury would opt to have the judge sentence them. In those few cases where the jury would sentence, it would be, Senator, a rarity that the jury wouldn't reach a verdict. Again, I can't think of a case in the last decade that I was involved with that occurred. But if it did, Senator, it would be a rarity, and yes, you would have a brand new trial.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Peterson.
I've been listening to this very intently, and I strongly support the underlying bill, but I also agree with Senator Stanley that that would be counterintuitive to pull in a whole new jury when there've already been a finding of guilty. I think the best way to do it is simply just to default to the judge in that case to go ahead and determine the sentencing. I mean, we've just gone through how they know the guidelines, they have the experience. So I would offer that amendment simply to that sole portion of the bill, and obviously this is going to go over to the House and to the governor, but I think in order so we don't get stuck on this one point, I would offer that amendment that if there is a mistrial by the jury on the sentencing phase, that the sentencing would then default to the judge.
It's been moved, and is there a second? It's a line amendment in concept. Council, could you come up with some language real quick? Charles?
I'm okay.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. I mean, basically what I would substitute is where it says declare a mistrial, that the court shall provide the ascertainment of punishment as provided in, and it would either be either the section or the article that refers to the ascertainment of punishment. That's the way I would structure it. And then strike the rest of that, striking the any retrial is limited to the end of defendant guilty.
Okay, we have a motion and a second in concept on lines 83, 84, I believe.
Chair,
yeah, Senator Deeds.
I'm trying to understand, if you're going to make that amendment, why wouldn't you just unstrike the stricken language and delete the new language?
Mr. Chair, I think the stricken language contemplates the court impaneling another jury to rehear the sentencing case, the sentencing phase. So, and if I understand Senator Stanley's and Senator Peterson's amendment, it's that you wouldn't have a new jury to decide punishment. It would just be the judge who was presiding over the case that the jury found.
Right. The amendment is to have the judge step in and make that
Senator
decision.
Peterson.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Peterson, are you finished? Okay.
I'm done.
Okay. Senator Morrissey.
Thank you. With regard to Senator Deed's question, Senator, I would direct your attention to 19.2-295.1. That bill was passed in March 7, 2012. It was initiated in the House by Delegate Habib, and the language says, and I'm quoting, "If the jury cannot agree on a punishment, the court shall impanel a different jury to ascertain punishment unless the defendant, the attorney for the Commonwealth, and the court agree in the manner provided in section 19.2-257 that the court shall fix punishment." While I appreciate Senator Stanley's suggestion, and if it's the will of this body, I'll support it. I just wanted to bring the senator's attention to that particular code section, which is what the law is at the present time. By the way, this is rarely going to happen, but I appreciate Senator Stanley's concern, and I hope this addresses Senator Deeds' inquiry.
Mr. Chair, I'd reiterate my previous amendment.
Yeah, Senator
If
Peterson.
I don't mean to, I think I understand what Senator Deeds is suggesting and how it fixes the, I'll say Senator Peterson, Senator Stanley. If you look at the stricken language, basically it says, if we just go to where the court shall fix punishment, I think what Senator Deeds is suggesting is just reinsert the court shall fix punishment and keep the rest of the strikes.
Okay, does everybody understand?
All the new language. So
If there's a
basically,
mistrial on the issue of punishment, then it reverts to the judge to make the punishment, not the jury.
Right.
You don't bring in a new jury.
Right, so the language would read, if the jury cannot agree on the punishment, the court shall fix punishment. Period.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Morrissey.
with that suggested language, I'd ask that the body adopt it, and I appreciate the comments from my colleagues.
You support it, is that right?
Yes, sir.
All in favor of the motion as previously, the line amendment as previously articulated, call the roll.
Senator Saslow.
Yes.
Amendment. Senator Norman. Senator Lucas. Senator Obenshain. Senator McDougal. Senator Stewart. Senator Stanley. Senator Chafin. I'm sorry, Senator Chafin. Thank you. Senator Deeds. Senator Peterson. Senator Serval. Senator McClellan. Senator Boysko.
Yes.
Senator Morrissey.
Yes.
Senator Edwards.
Aye.
10 ayes, 3 nays.
Is there a motion that the bill be, as amended, be...
Move that the bill be reported as amended.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Peterson moves that the bill be...
Mr. Chairman.
Reported and re-referred to Finance Council.
Mr. Chairman. Yes. I mean no harm to this incredibly important bill whatsoever. I want to point out something that may make the bill more palatable, at least point out something that creates an issue. If you look at lines 49 and 50, those lines require a defendant that seeks to have a jury do the sentencing, that they request that the jury do the sentencing before the jury is dismissed. And so a defendant can elect a jury trial and withhold his decision as to who will do the sentencing until the very last moment. Now, as a defense lawyer, I think it's a great idea, but it creates, I have to point out, in fairness, problems for the prosecution. Not knowing whether it will be a jury sentencing or if sentencing will be delayed for judicial sentencing, a prosecutor will have to ask that the victim remain either in the courthouse or on standby to be called to testify if there is a jury sentencing. In addition, prosecutors are required to provide copies of prior convictions upon which they will rely at sentencing 14 days in advance of the trial, this would require prosecutors to do that in any event, not knowing whether a jury will do the sentencing or not. So while I see tremendous merit in being able to decide after you've seen the jury and reacted with them, whether you will trust this jury to sentence your client, because it does create hardships for the Commonwealth and for victims, the committee may question whether it wants to pass the bill with this addition, and the patron may want to consider whether the bill should go forward with the language as it is, instead of requiring that defendant-elect say no less than 28 days prior to the commencement of trial, whether to have the jury do the sentencing.
Okay. We have a motion.
Mr. Chairman.
Who's this? I can't.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Senator Norman.
Mr. Chairman, a reference was made about taking a snippet of looking at Gone with the Wind. I think that this bill needs to look like Atlanta and Gone with the Wind and go down in flames. It is absolutely flipping our criminal judicial system on its head, and I appreciate Mr. Benjamin pointing out a very practical issue. Also, I find it, and for those of you who know me, I am still a practicing criminal defense attorney. But to turn this bill and this process on its head like this, and to preclude a Commonwealth attorney from having the ability to request a jury trial at any point in time, is a serious restriction on the prosecutorial discretion that we award Commonwealth attorneys.
Mr. Chairman?
No, I have not finished yet.
Okay, go ahead, Senator Norman.
And I just would encourage everybody to really reflect on this. And just because you speak loudly and passionately does not mean that this is a good concept.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Morsi.
Mr. Chairman, it's not just speaking loudly and passionately, but with all due respect, the senator from James City hasn't read the bill. This bill does not prohibit the Commonwealth from demanding a jury trial. That continues. This bill simply allows a defendant who opts for a jury trial, as is his right, as is the right for the Commonwealth to opt for a jury trial. The defendant can then have the sentencing done by the judge. So I have no idea what the senator from James City County is suggesting when he says this turns criminal justice on its head. It does not.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Obenshain. Senator Obenshain?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, go ahead.
The senator from Richmond does speak loudly and passionately, and I appreciate his volume and passion. But let me perhaps put a finer point on the point that Senator Norman did make that I understood, and I think most people did understand. What this does is basically it says we do not trust our citizens of the Commonwealth of Virginia to sit in judgment and to hand down punishment for people who are prosecuted and convicted of crimes. We right now allow juries across the Commonwealth to sentence people who are charged with crimes. This takes that away from the people of Virginia, from jurors across the Commonwealth of Virginia. It says that we trust criminals to make that choice, but we do not trust our fellow citizens to make a judgment about what is an appropriate punishment for crimes that are committed in our communities across the Commonwealth of Virginia. This is one more piece of legislation that keeps Virginia, that makes Virginia less safe. It would be my hope that we will defeat this.
Mr. Chairman. Sir Revelle.
I've neglected to call the public. There are a number of people from the public who would like to speak on the bill. Does anybody else want to say anything before I call members of the public?
Sir Revelle.
Senator Sorrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Speaking to the bill. Mr. Chairman, Virginia is a holdout on this. 44 of the states in the United States of America don't process their criminal cases this way. This practice is an historical anachronism which devolved out of the 1790s. And I'm happy to give you all a law review article which explains where and when it came from. But it is a outdated, archaic, old-fashioned process. We heard testimony during session from prosecutors that said it chills jury rights. It chills people's constitutional rights. From prosecutors who admitted that. The VACA representative said that in our committee last session. This isn't some unusual, weird idea. This is how the rest of the country is doing this right now. So, Mr. Chairman, this isn't saying anything about not trusting people. This is about getting people who are in a have better and more informed position to make these kinds of judgments. That's why the rest of the country allows or has judges make these decisions after they've been given sentencing guidelines and more complete information to make these judgments, rather than leaving them to jurors who've probably never sentenced somebody in a criminal case in their life. So, Mr. Chairman, we need to move this discussion along. I say we take the public testimony. As soon as we've done that, I have a motion because we need to move this docket. We have a big docket to do and not a lot of time.
I'd like to then call upon members of the public. Maria Jankowski and other defense attorneys are up first, according to the list I have here. Is Maria Jankowski here by Zoom? While we're waiting, I'd like to point out, as a former JAG officer in the United States Marine Corps, it's the defendant in the military that gets to call the shots as to whether or not they would have a court-martial with members equivalent to the civilian jury. In the military, it's the defendant's right to ask for a jury or the equivalent thereof, and not the prosecution. But is Maria Jankowski there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the committee, for this opportunity. My name is Maria Jankowski, and I'm the Deputy Director at the Virginia Indigent Defense Commission, and we are the public defenders of Virginia. Just a few brief points, because I know most of the members are really knowledgeable on this issue. The problem with the current practice is your penalty range changes if you exercise your constitutional right to a jury. Often, our jurors are horrified to learn what they must impose. And it's highly problematic because this can be demanded by the prosecutor and can be abused by the prosecutor. What the current practice does is it effectively creates mandatory minimums where the General Assembly has not created a mandatory minimum. And let me give you an easy example. You have a number of gentlemen in a car. Maybe narcotics are found in the trunk of a car, and all of the individuals are arrested, and maybe you have a client who's a first offender. A possession with the intent to distribute in Virginia, if you take a jury, you are looking at a mandatory 5-year sentence. If you go before a court or a judge, I think the sentencing guideline range are going to start at 7 months. You have to look at your client and say, if you exercise your constitutional right to a jury, you're going to have to get at least 5 years. This is highly problematic. It allows, when the penalty range changes simply because you exercise a constitutional right, that is the problem with the current practice. The problem with the current practice is the Commonwealth, the prosecutor, is allowed to create mandatory minimums where this body, this General Assembly, did not create mandatory minimums. And that's what's problematic about the current practice. And that's why this bill is just basic fundamental fairness. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Doug Ramsher of the Virginia Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. Doug Ramsher.
They're not on the line, Senator.
The next is Brian Kennedy, Policy Director for Justice Forward Virginia. And Ashley Shapiro would be the fill-in if Brian's not here, I believe.
Morning, Senator. Brian Kennedy is here. I'm the Policy Director with Justice Forward Virginia. In addition to the many other points that were made by Ms. Jankowski, Senator Surivel, Senator Morrissey today, and what we talked about last January, what I also wanted to add was that obviously we're concerned right now about having the community see what's happening with our law enforcement officers, with our Commonwealth attorneys, with our criminal legal system. And that's not happening in 97% of cases across the Commonwealth because they're dealt with by plea bargain instead of jury trial. Where I don't think this bill is going to drastically increase the amount of jury trials, it will let people accused of crimes be able to go to trial without having to risk a higher punishment, and will allow the community to see how our system actually works, whether it's working well or whether it's not working so well, which I think many people are learning is the case. So we would ask everyone here to support the bill because it's going to make common sense and it's going to allow our system to work much better and much more efficiently in the way the Constitution originally imagined, which is for people to be tried by juries when they're facing going to prison at the hands of the state. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is Ashley Shapiro available?
No, sir.
She may be in court. Okay, no. All right, let's see. The next is Zoe Spencer. Zoe Spencer. Zoe Spencer, is she there?
Yes, I'm here. Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Dr. Zoe Spencer. I am a human rights activist and a professor of sociology in the Department of Sociology and Criminal Justice at Virginia State University. I reside in Chester and I work in Petersburg. And I had something else to say, but I wanted to respond to Senator Obershain. The Sixth Amendment guarantees under the impartial jury requirement that jurors must be unbiased and the jury must consist of a representative cross-section of the community. However, as a sociologist, I know that there's countless literature on racial discrimination in jury selection, and that disproportionately excludes African Americans from the jury pool. And there's countless literature on racial bias among juries who are not comprised of a defendant's peers, especially when the defendant is an African American and a male. So I support SB 507 because this bill will enhance a defendant citizen's right to reduce misinterpretations and misapplications of sentencing guidelines and incidents of subjective and biased over-sentencing that disproportionately lends to longer and more disparate sentences for people of color, low-income people from low-income communities, and African-American men in particular, who on average receive sentences that are 20% longer than other races and disproportionate to the crime itself. I believe that this bill will be a significant contribution toward anti-racism legislation by encouraging greater parity in both criminal justice processing and sentencing in the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lorraine Wright, is she there? Lorraine Wright.
I am here. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. My name is Lorraine Wright, Executive Director of I Vote For Me, a community-based organization focused on self-advocacy and the protection of human rights right here in the Commonwealth. While a majority, if not all, of the bills introduced during this special session are centered around criminal justice reform, my comments are solely centered on justice. Not justice reform, justice only, nothing else. So to clarify my position, I am in support of this Senate bill because we know that Black people have been negatively impacted in a disproportionate way when it comes to every aspect of the criminal justice system, from profiling and arrest to charging and sentencing. The very introduction of this and all new pieces of legislation or amendments to existing codes are evidence of two very horrible realities. One, Black people in aggregate do not currently, nor have we ever had equal protection under the law in these United States, or of course here in the Commonwealth. And two, for Black people, equitable application of the law is relatively non-existent or a crapshoot at best. So while the law is the law, it does not work the same for all of us. Let's be honest, we've seen way too many videos and images of knees on necks and in backs, but who was on the pavement? The issue is the institutional constructs of oppression. The reality for people who look like me is that some of us never make it to the courthouse in order for there to be a preponderance of the evidence, or even make it home alive. So for justice to be realized, this is less about getting any one of these bills passed and much more about transformational change in thought and practice, starting right here today with this body. As I watched this Judiciary Committee and listened to public comment on Tuesday, I have several observations that added perspective to my comments today, and I'd like to share. Senator Favola felt that proposed Bill 5034 might perhaps incentivize people to make good choices. And while I agree, the rhetorical question I have for this Judiciary Committee becomes then, what do we, the people, use to incentivize our elected, appointed, and taxpayer-funded officials to not just make the choices, but to follow the law? There's no need for sovereign and or qualified immunity when there's accountability to an equitable application of the same laws we're all bound to. Senator Cosgrove said that 5034 was way too lenient, intervening in another area that we shouldn't be in. But Senator Cosgrove, the very concept of justice exhausts and explores all avenues when coming to just and equitable conclusions. So to try and detach intersectionalities that inherently exist emphasizes the historical practice of invoking plausible deniability in order to escape responsibility. Senator Stewart suggested the addition of verbiage regarding exigent circumstances, but the problem with exigent circumstances, Senator, is that it's a second cousin to qualified immunity. Whether or not we acknowledge it, exigent circumstances always exist, but rarely work in the favor of people who look like me, but provide escape clauses for people who look like many of you. Did Marcus David Peters get the benefit of consideration of his exigent circumstances before being murdered by RPD when he was visibly in the midst of a mental health crisis? When Marcus David Peters is naked and unarmed and not one officer on the scene can, one, identify that he's in crisis, or two, detain him with non-lethal force, then that's just not the job for you. So let's be clear, this is not about a lack of training, because right here in this Commonwealth, less than a year ago on August 27, 2019, Matthew Bernard, a white male who killed 3 family members, was chased for more than an hour by police, naked, with a shotgun, and was apprehended without incident. How many people know where there's a will, there's a way? We demand equal protection under the law. Attorney Benjamin asked a very important question on Tuesday. And he said, why is that specific language needed when the existing statutes covers all stops? So critical question I'd like to take a stab at. The reason specific inclusionary or exclusionary verbiage would be added is because what we're doing is negotiating justice, but justice requires no negotiation. It has its own standard. Senator Somerville spoke of the confusion between assault and assault and battery. I just texted my parallel. Because many of you who are responsible for ensuring justice are also confused about what justice is and what it looks like. Senator Reed spoke in support of police officers, but I need for him to speak up in support of human life, period. Commonwealth Attorney Shannon Taylor in Henrico talked about working on legislation to prosecute hate crimes, but when Black students were victims of hate crimes and sexual assault at Short Pump Middle School 2 years ago, there was no urgency to prosecute. There is no duality in justice, Attorney Taylor, unless, of course, you have prosecutorial immunity. When Charles Quagliato, a little while ago, Attorney Quagliato summarized SB 5014, said that the legislation requires law enforcement to have some sort of de-escalation or crisis intervention training so patrons of that bill believe it's equitable and just, that discretion is given to the same entities that can't get it right now to figure it out on their own. The egregious conditions that necessitated this
Mr. Chairman,
in the first place are not at all isolated. These patterns of behavior have not only been acceptable,
Mr. Chairman,
the witness hasn't finished speaking yet.
Time of reckoning.
If you
It
could
is
move
absolutely
this,
our responsibility to
if the
not only
witness could,
dismantle the predatory
wrap it up.
systems that have created these conditions, but also remove any and everyone that's a threat to the process of justice or the freedoms that we're all entitled to.
Could you wrap up your? We have a limited time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Nikki Potts and a couple of associates. Could you limit your comments to no more than 2 minutes? Thank you.
They aren't in the room, sir.
They're not in the room? Okay. The final speaker be Candace Lucas. Could you limit your comment to 2 minutes, please? Candace Lucas.
They aren't in the room, sir, but you do have Susan Lauchen.
Okay, I don't have her name, but Susan Lauchen, again, 2 minutes tops. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay. I'm here today to speak on SB 5007. I strongly oppose the portion of this bill that would allow a mistrial to be declared simply because a jury cannot agree on sentencing, especially when the perpetrator has been convicted.
Mr. Chair, we've already taken that out of the bill.
We've changed that language, so it would go default to the judge. Does that deal with your
Currently,
issue?
the jury is unable to decide the sentencing. A new jury is impaneled to make the decision. I totally object to wording of SB 5007 as it stands right now. I request that the wording of this bill be amended, especially with regard to violent crimes. It would throw out the verdict just because a jury could not agree on the punishment. Having to be dragged through that trial process a second time is unnecessarily harmful and damaging to the victims of their family and their families. This is re-victimization, not justice. Your focus in your attempts to reform the criminal justice system must be on the side of the victims and their families. This is never more important than when the victim is suffering with the loss of their life or some type of sexual violence. In addition, it is incredibly wrong to expect taxpayers to fund a second trial when the verdict was never in question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we did change that provision. Is there a motion?
Move to report, refer to finance.
Been moved and seconded to report and refer to finance. Please call the roll.
Senator Saslow. Senator Norman. Senator Lucas. Senator Obenshain. Senator McDougal. Senator Stewart. Senator Stanley. Senator Chafin. Senator Deeds. Senator Peterson. Senator Surville. Senator McClellan. Senator Boysko.
Aye.
Senator Morrissey. Senator Edwards. 9 ayes, 4 nays.
9 to 4, the motion carries. Okay, we move on down the list here.
Mr. Chairman, Surville.
Yeah, Senator Surville.
Thank you. On Senate Bill 5002, I believe Senator Norman might have a motion on his bill we could take care of really quick.
Thank you, Mr.
Senate
Chairman.
Bill 5005 and 5002, which is Senator Norman's bill.
Mr. Chairman, that's another version of the prohibition of the chokehold, and I'm going to respectfully ask that it be rolled into Senator Surville's bill and list us as co-chief patrons.
Mr. Chairman. The number is clear. You're saying 5005 and 5002 be rolled into Senator Surville's bill, which bill is that?
Mr. Chairman, I believe they have to be referred to finance where that can happen.
What is the name of your bill, Senator Surville, so the public knows? Okay, that bill has already been referred to finance. Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would move that Senate Bills 5002 and 5005 be re-referred to finance.
Okay. Been moved and seconded that Senate Bills 5002 and 5005 be re-referred to finance. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay. The next. Senator Morrissey, 5049, chokeholds. Senator Morrissey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It seems that 5049 could also, similarly to Senator Norman's bill, be rolled in to Senator Surville's bill. Is that?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Surville.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Speaking to the bill, Senator Morrissey's bill, if we're talking about his chokehold bill, which I think is what we're talking about.
Yes, sir.
Is it a little bit different of an approach to the chokehold issue than in the policing reform bill or Senator Norman's bill, because it would create a new crime for a police officer to use a chokehold? So, I mean, it could be incorporated in as long as we're not altering the policy in the existing policing reform bill, but
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
Who's that? I can't see. Senator Peterson.
I think we've already decided the policy on what we want to do, so if we're rolling it in, we're doing it with the understanding it's going to conform to the language of the bill we passed 2 days ago.
And so, Mr. Chair, the motion would be to refer without reporting. Just refer it, and then it can be conformed and rolled in the Finance Committee.
Okay. So the motion is to refer it to finance. Is that correct?
Okay. Second.
It's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 5049 be just referred to finance. Moved and seconded. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. We'll call the roll. Call the roll.
Yes, sir. Senator Saslow.
Pass.
Senator Norment. Senator Lucas. Senator Obenshain. Senator McDougal. Senator Stewart. Senator Stanley. Senator Chafin. Senator Deeds. Senator Peterson. Senator Serval. Senator McClellan. Senator Boysko. Senator Morrissey.
Aye.
Senator Saslow. Senator Edwards.
Aye.
8 ayes, 5 nays.
Okay, the motion carries. Okay, now we move on to Senate Bill 5035, Senator Hashmi's bill, Law Enforcement Civilian Review Boards. Senator Hashmi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is a substitute, and I move the adoption of the substitute.
Is there a second? Been moved and seconded that the substitute be adopted to Senate Bill 5035. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Would you like to explain the substitute?
And I apologize, Senator Serval informed me that I could not actually move the substitute. So,
Well, Senator Serval moved it.
thank you so much, Mr.
It's not
Chair.
online, I'm told, but so explain the
Mr. Chair,
substitute.
It's not online yet.
Mr. Chair, just give it 30 seconds and it should pop up online. It's just technology is a little slow.
As you were waiting, it's my understanding it just simply deletes the Law Enforcement Officers Procedural Guarantee Act issue so that if any locality adopts a civilian review board, that locality, the Law Enforcement Officers Procedural Guarantee Act would not apply to that locality, but it would still apply statewide. Is that correct? Counsel, is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that is what the substitute does. The substitute differs from the introduced version, as you said. It eliminates the repeal of the Law Enforcement Procedural Guarantee Act. And if a locality was to create a law enforcement civilian review board, then the provisions of that act would not apply to any law enforcement officers who are subject to the oversight of a law enforcement civilian review board.
But the statewide Law Enforcement Officers Procedural Guarantee Act would still apply to all other localities, correct?
That's correct. And the substitute is available online now.
All right, hold on.
Okay, the substitute's available online. Are there any speakers? Senator Hashmi, would you like to explain the bill?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So Senate Bill 5035 emerges in response to a call to action by many different groups and advocates throughout the state, and it helps to provide transparency and accountability for our police departments. This bill is enabling legislation for our localities. Under current state law, civilian review boards in Virginia are limited in power. Police departments are able to control the oversight bodies' access to data, evidence, witnesses, and personnel file that the CRBs might actually need for meaningful oversight. An effective CRB actually ensures that police officers act with integrity and treat every person with dignity. It empowers and inspires self-governance and a culture of mutual respect. And when it's done correctly, CRBs establish social and racial justice. They help to engage in community outreach and amplify the voices of the socially, politically, and economically disenfranchised. Localities should be able to give these bodies subpoena power to compel the production of documents and witnesses, allow them to gather, analyze, and review information, produce public reports, and make informed decisions relating to policing issues of significant public interest. So CRBs assist in providing more equitable policing because they involve a process by which non-police members can regularly provide input into police department operations, and they foster a culture of transparency. In response to some of the issues that were raised by localities and some of our law enforcement agencies, this particular bill ensures that the Law Enforcement Procedural Guarantee Act stays in place unless there is a CRB board within that locality. And in that instance, as we just heard, the Procedural Guarantee Act is repealed when there is a CRB present. In addition, the definition of law enforcement agencies includes police departments and campus police at public universities, and so an established CRB would be for all of those law enforcement agencies within that same locality. Further, sheriff's associations and the Virginia State Police are not included within this particular bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so thank you, Senator Hashmi. We have a number of people who's signed up to speak, starting with Kim Rolla. Kim Rolla, limit each one to a bunch of them to 2 minutes apiece, please. Senate Bill 5035, Senator Kim Rolla wants to speak on that. Is she here?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good morning, Chairman Edwards and committee members. I had the pleasure of speaking with this committee last month, but once again, my name is Kim Rolla. I'm the interim legal director of Legal Aid Justice Center's Civil Rights and Racial Justice Program, and I'm here to urge you to vote in favor of SB 5053. Our years of working alongside communities have taught LAJC what is necessary for effective community-driven oversight, and this bill provides those things. It explicitly empowers localities to establish civilian oversight bodies with a broad mandate. It enables localities to vest those bodies with subpoena power to compel the appearance of witnesses and the production of documents. And finally, it allows localities to choose to give oversight bodies final disciplinary authority regarding certain complaints. That this is enabling legislation and not a top-down mandate is a strength of this bill. Meaningful, effective civilian oversight must be community-driven and responsive to local needs and priorities. It is also essential that SB 5053 enables localities to decide if civilian oversight bodies should have final disciplinary authority in certain situations. When community trust in a law enforcement agency is significantly eroded, final disciplinary authority may be necessary to restore that confidence. We should allow localities to decide when that tool is necessary. This bill reflects community priorities and nationally established best practices in establishing civilian oversight of law enforcement. And for that reason, I urge you to please vote in favor of SB 50.
Okay, thank you very much. Emmanuel Harris.
Yes, sir. I'm here.
Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to speak on behalf of the Baptist Ministers Conference of Richmond and vicinity, and I feel that SB 5035 is essential. It's an essential part of accountability. I do feel that the communities, particularly those that are African American, should have a say about how they are policed and when they are over policed. I heard a comment earlier that certain bills flip the Justice Department on its head. My response is it needs to be flipped on its head for many African American communities and how we've been policed. So please, I strongly support this bill, and I just feel that it's another arm of accountability. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jeffrey Vogel. Go ahead, Mr. Vogel.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm an attorney who has handled police misconduct cases for nearly 50 years. This bill is one of the best and most important bills that I have seen in my lifetime, in my career, to deal with the issue of those limited number of police officers who engage in misconduct. It is very important that these civilian review boards, as you have indicated in the legislation, be fully independent and have authority to subpoena information from the police department and others. Several years ago, the police chief in a large county issued a booklet directed at young black males, urging them not to argue with police officers if they're stopped and not to engage in any other activity that might result in an altercation, but rather to bring the complaints to that agency. Well, let me tell you, that agency accepts complaints, but will never tell the complainant the outcome of that complaint. And by the way, unfortunately, that's true of the state police as well. In a case I'm involved in, one of the police officers had 11 complaints in 1 year, for which he was exonerated on each single one. I have seen many instances in my career where officers have been exonerated or where complaint has not been sustained, where a jury finds that the officers engaged in misconduct, or where the agency settles with a number that clearly indicates that they're aware that their employee was wrong. So in order for communities to trust the police department, in order for people to have adequate remedies, in order for the internal disciplinary process in police departments to have a deterrent effect on officers who might engage in misconduct, this bill is critical. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker is Walter Hynek. Walter Hynek.
Walter, if you could unmute your mic.
Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. My name is Walt Heineke. I'm a professor of research, statistics, and evaluation. I'm also a member of the People's Coalition for Criminal Justice Reform in Charlottesville. I just wanted to mention that I'm fully in support of SB 5035 for many reasons. The primary reasons is to remind you that none of us are free unless all of us are free. And I'll tell you that in Charlottesville, many of my friends who are black and brown are not free to go out into public without fear of being disproportionately stopped and frisked in our community. And I think this is true of other communities around the Commonwealth. We've seen the statistics over and over again about disproportionate stop and frisk, and it has to stop. And I think enabling strong civilian review boards is a step in the right direction for addressing that problem amongst many other problems as well. In Charlottesville, we've had an attempt for over a year to create a civilian review board, and it was done in a very professional manner, and it was done enabling the strongest possible model under current state and Commonwealth laws and regulations. And yet still our city council is fearful of implementing that model, and your enabling of SB 5035 would go a long way to alleviating localities' fears about engaging in strong police civilian review. We need subpoena power. Civilian review boards need subpoena power, and they need disciplinary power. What we don't want to do is to create civilian review boards that are mere window dressing and symbolic and don't serve our communities. Passing SB 5035 will engage the community in trust building with police departments around the Commonwealth. And as you know, we're in the middle of a racial pandemic in this country. And your work here is going to go a long way toward alleviating those problems with racism in the Commonwealth and in our localities. So I urge you to please pass SB 5035. Thank you.
Tell me if I'm wrong. Thank you very much. The next speaker is Johannes Whitaker.
40.1.
Senate Bill 5035. Johannes Whitaker.
40.1. 57.4 VA code.
Can you speak louder, please?
Speak louder.
Sure. Yes. Good morning. My name is Johannes Whitaker. I work at the Legal Aid Justice Center, and I thank you for your time. I'm here to ask you to support SB 5035 and enable meaningful civilian oversight of law enforcement. Virginians are working across the state to develop solutions to our local policing issues. And I'm a member of one such organization, the Richmond Transparency and Accountability Project, that works to build safer and healthier communities by disrupting mass incarceration at its source, police policies and procedures. And we need you to help us to do our job well. And so I'm asking and calling you to support SB 5035 to empower localities to create civilian oversight, to let localities have subpoena power, and to let localities decide who should have the final disciplinary authority in those cases. So thank you, and I urge you all to support SB 5035.
Thank you very much. Chelsea Wise, it's limited to 2 minutes, please.
Hello. Thank you, everyone. My name is Chelsea Higgs Wise.
Speak up a little bit.
Executive Director. Can you hear me now?
That's fine.
Okay, great. My name is Chelsea Higgs Wise. I'm a director of marijuana justice and a steering committee member of the Virginia Coalition for Transforming Policing, as well as an active member of the Richmond Transparency Accountability Project. I come to you today to say that I just support this bill. I support how this bill came about by working with community members where this issue is important to us, by working with mental health professionals who specialize in these areas to create a bill for localities across the Commonwealth where we can all feel safe and our oversight is something that we can trust. I support the process of how Senator Hashmi invited us in, along with the legal and community experts, as well as hearing stories from constituents that are ready for a new body of oversight for their public safety. We must now have the power given to localities. We must grant them with full power of subpoenas, audits, and reviews. We must build a community review boards that are free from Commonwealth attorneys and free from police for true independent review. As an advocate, I know the biggest hurdle for feeling like we need true transparency in our questions asked and is to review law enforcement behaviors. In Richmond, just last year, a law enforcement officer intimidated young Black students at a middle school saying, "Wait until your ass is 18, it's mine." To this day, we still have no idea who this officer is. There is no transparency, and we have fought for years just to get the data to get here to talk about use of force. I am here to say that there is time for a new body of oversight for trust with our community and our elected officials, and I'm here to really urge you all to vote yes to this bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Sarah Burke, 2 minutes, please. Sarah Burke, this will be the last speaker, I believe.
Thank you so much. My name is Sarah Burke. And
Speak up a little louder, please.
Yes, sir. My name is Sarah Burke. I'm a criminal defense investigator and a capital mitigation specialist. I was also one of the founding members of Charlottesville's Civilian Review Board in 2018. I spent years researching civilian oversight, best practices, and enabling language. We know that civilian-driven oversight can be effective if given the enabling authority. Research shows that if a civilian oversight body has investigative authority, the ability to recommend discipline, and the ability to focus on trends of police misconduct, we see a reduction in racial disparities in arrests, as well as in police homicides of citizens. I support SB 5035 because it gives localities the power to do three things: to create civilian oversight, to give those civilian oversight bodies subpoena power, and to have a level of authoritative power in police disciplinary matters. The state should not define civilian oversight for each locality. The cornerstone best practice of the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement is to build community oversight in a way that is particularized to each community's need. There is no one-size-fits-all model. Each of the more than 200 different oversight bodies in this country is different. Please pass 5035 to empower Virginia localities to create the civilian oversight necessary in our communities to improve police accountability, transparency, and safety. Thank you.
Okay, the next person speaking, I misspoke before. There are other people who would like to speak as well. Nancy Carpenter, again, 2 minutes apiece.
Good morning, members of the committee, and I appreciate the opportunity to make this comment. My name is Nancy Carpenter, and I'm a recent appointee to the City of Charlottesville's Police Civilian Review Board. My ask is that you pass this bill, SB 335. It has taken the dedication of many people these past 3 years to get my city to this point. Our PCRB was born out of the tragedy and trauma of UTR 2017 and the decades of negative impact to communities of color because of systemic racism and white supremacy in policing. Localities need this bill and the structure it provides to begin the necessary oversight by the people to hold law enforcement accountable. My colleagues on our board have factual information that residents do not come forward with complaints because of the fear of retaliation to either themselves or family members. I guarantee you that somewhere today, in Charlottesville, someone will be harassed by law enforcement and believe there is no process or transparency to feel confident in making a complaint. Government is to be of the people, exists by the people, and is for the people. This bill must be passed. It takes those words we live by and brings them to life in a very substantive way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Carpenter. The next one's Katrina Turner.
They've dropped off, Senator.
Okay, Tracy Hopper.
They've also dropped.
Okay, Rosia Parker.
They have also dropped.
Okay, then Alan Charles Chipman wants to speak to a number of bills, but we're on SB 5035 is this person on the in the room.
You're on Alan Chipman.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, my name is Alan Chipman. I live in Richmond, Virginia. I'm writing today in support of SB 5035. As a minister and faith leader, I understand the power of accountability. My dad always used to tell me, people don't do what you expect, people do what you inspect. And most importantly, he said the most dangerous person on earth is someone who doesn't have to answer to Lucas prior to presenting bills on accountability for police in this session. In Richmond, we had 2 city council members tear gassed after they proposed police reform. We've had our Commonwealth's attorney come to the conclusion that despite seeing video evidence of police running over protesters, that they saw nothing criminal, only to have her confess later that she gets a cut of civil asset forfeiture funds that police collect to help pay for her office furniture and computers. We saw our mayor caught on video telling a room full of police that he saw nothing criminal and was simply conducting an investigation to calm things down. While the chief of police murdered a black man named Jeremy Gilliam in 2002, and though the family was told was no longer with the police, was made police chief in 2020 and is currently the chief of staff. We just lost Congressman John Lewis, who in his unedited speech on the March on Washington had to say this on the need for legislation on police accountability. He asked, who will protect the citizens in Danville, Virginia, who must live in constant fear in police state? How is it that some 57 years ago, John Lewis was talking about the police brutality in Virginia, and those cries persist now from citizens? The answer rings true in the words of my father: accountability. Please vote yes on this legislation so that residents and the people of this Commonwealth can have meaningful, independent oversight and accountability with subpoena power. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you very much. The last speaker we have on this bill, 5035, is Jonathan Iglesias.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Jonathan Iglesias, the Policy Director with the Virginia Sexual and Domestic Violence Action Alliance. We support this bill, and I'll keep my testimony brief. As you all know, the sexual and domestic violence advocacy field has long worked with the criminal justice system, including police, as one option to respond to sexual and domestic violence in communities. Many officers have a history of collaboration with victim advocates in building truly trauma-informed communities that provide safety and accountability. We acknowledge and value those individual officers who have made significant contributions to bring about change. However, when harm is committed by someone who wields significant power and control on behalf of the state, we believe that just like with offenders of sexual and domestic violence, the system and communities need to be able to take swift and effective action to provide transparency and accountability. In our field, we have seen community-based sexual assault response teams and community-based domestic violence task forces successfully use similar models community-led models to examine and improve the systems within which they operate and in service to victims. We believe that given the power and duties outlined within this particular bill, a civilian oversight and review board that operates at the direction and discretion of localities statewide can be an incredibly effective tool for improving safety and accountability for all Virginians. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's all of the speakers. Been moved and seconded to report and re-refer to finance. Please call the roll on Senate Bill 5035.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
Yeah, we'll do that next.
Mr. Chair.
McClellan.
McClellan. Mr. Chairman. There is one other witness who is trying to speak on this bill, Princess Blanding, the sister of Marcus David Peters. I just got a text that she has been waiting to speak on this bill.
I apologize. So what's the
Princess Blanding.
Okay, Princess Blanding. Okay, please look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much, Senator McCollum, for getting me in there. I would like to thank Senator Heshmi for carrying Bill SB 5035 for independent civilian review boards with subpoena power. I would be very remiss if I would not express my concerns while also expressing the importance that we get it right. To simply create this bill to be enabling is extremely disturbing. As someone mentioned earlier, in Richmond, there was a situation where a police officer said to school-age students, wait until you're 18 and your ass is mine. There was zero accountability, very parallel to the zero accountability in the murder of my brother, Marcus David Peters. It is also very important that I state that these boards need to be elected so that we have community members who are on these boards that are holding our police departments accountable. Time after time, history and our present has shown us that we cannot trust the police to police themselves, and our local officials, elected officials, have failed at doing the job as well. I strongly urge you all to amend this bill to state that the board members will be elected, and to not only make it so that the board members are elected, to also mandate this throughout all localities in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I am very concerned that if this is simply enabling, that many localities will not say, I am going to go ahead and create an independent civilian review board with subpoena power to hold our police officers accountable. Again, I thank you, Senator Heshmi, for carrying this bill, but it is very important that we get it right, not tomorrow, not in 2021, but now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I haven't, Jonathan Iglesias. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, is that all the speakers?
Call the question.
A motion to report the bill and re-refer to finance. Please call the roll.
Senator Saslaw. Senator Norment. Senator Lucas.
Aye.
Senator Obenshain. Senator McDougal. Senator Stewart. Senator Stanley. Senator Chafin. Senator Deeds. Senator Peterson. Senator Servo. Senator McClellan. Senator Boysko.
Aye.
Senator Morrissey. Senator Edwards.
Aye.
8 ayes, 6 nays.
Motion carries 8-6. All right, we'll move on now to Senate Bill 5037, Senator Favola's bill, Criminal Justice Services Board Committee on Training.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can be very quick. I just want to state one amendment to my bill. I would like to retain the 2 sheriffs and the 2 representatives of the Virginia Association of Chiefs of Police and the 1 member designated by the chairman of the board from among the members appointed to the governor. So essentially, I'm keeping everything that's already there, and I'm adding, as you can see, in italics.
Hand one to me and hand one to the chair.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, Senator Deeds.
Mr. Chair, this bill is a part of, seems like a sub-part of a bill that we passed out of this committee 2 days ago from Senator Locke. And I would move that we refer this bill to the Finance Committee so it can be considered for incorporation into that bill at a later time.
I'm fine with that. He wants it incorporated in Senate Bill 5030, and I was going to make that motion. I just wanted to make sure, Mr. Chairman, that my amendment to keep everything that is already there, I had deleted some things. I would like an amendment to change what you're going to re-refer to Finance.
Mr. Chairman, I make the motion that she has suggested.
So the motion's been made and duly seconded that the bill simply be re-referred to Finance.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator,
point of order.
Senator Sorville.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, the motion is to amend the bill in accordance with Senator Favola's request. And then after that, I'll have a second motion to refer it.
Amend it to conform to the language in Senator Locke's bill?
Not
Mr.
entirely,
Chair, I
Mr.
think the
Chairman.
amendment is one that would add back the two members, one chief police and one sheriff that were excluded from the original bill.
I got it. I understand. Okay.
And the last line.
So the motion is to amend the bill to add back the two members who had been excluded previously.
And one other, the member designated by the chairman of the board. So there'd be, you're keeping everything as is, and you're just adding my italics.
Everybody understand? The motion's been made and seconded to make this line amendment. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we re-refer the bill with amendments to the Finance Committee.
Second.
Motion been made to re-refer the bill, the amended bill to Finance. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And now we move on to some expungements. Senator Deeds, you have Senate Bill 5043.
5043, Mr. Chairman, should look familiar to everybody because it's identical to a bill that we passed during this last session that wasn't taken up, I don't think, in the House of Delegates. It would allow a person after 5 years from the date of conviction or the date that they've paid all their fines and restitution, they've completed whatever sentence they had to. They've completed their probation on a charge of possession of marijuana or controlled substances, underage alcohol or tobacco possession, using a false ID to obtain alcohol. They'd be able to get the charge expunged.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Sorville.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe there's a couple bills from our colleagues, I think, that are on the docket that probably ought to be incorporated into this. And I think, Mr. Chairman, you might want to inquire if we do that so we can take care of those two before we get it out of here.
We have Senate Bill 5006, Senator Norman's bill, and I believe Senator Peake's bill, 5009. Is there a motion that, with the concurrence of the sponsors, that these bills be rolled into Senator Deeds' bill? Huh? Yeah. What?
Charles wants to speak.
Yeah. Charles, would you like to counsel?
Mr. Chairman, there are three other expungement bills that are kind of all encapsulated or contained in the Senator Deeds bill. Senate Bill 5006, which is Senator Norman's expungement bill dealing with pardons. Senate Bill 5009, which is Senator Peake's bill that deals with underage alcohol possession. And Senate Bill 5110 from Senator McDougal, which deals with, again, underage alcohol and some misdemeanor, some drug offenses for the convictions and deferred disposition drug offenses for marijuana.
Okay, with the concurrence of the patrons, Senate Bills 5005, I'm sorry. What are the bills again, Council?
Senate Bill 5006, Senate Bill 5009, Senate Bill 5110.
The motion is to roll all those bills into Senator Deeds' bill. It's been moved and seconded with the concurrence of the patrons. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Now, there's a motion that this substitute be re-referred to Finance.
I move that we report the bill and re-refer it to Finance.
The motion's been made and seconded to report the substitute and to re-refer to finance. Everybody understand? Please call the roll.
Senator Sasslaw. Senator Norman. Senator Lucas. Senator Obenshain. Senator McDougal. Senator Stewart. Senator Stanley. Senator Chafin. Senator Deeds. Senator Peterson. Senator Serval. Senator McClellan. Senator Boysko.
Aye.
Senator Morrissey. Senator Edwards. Ayes 14, no zero.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, Senator Lucas, would you like to do your bill?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I will. Mr. Chairman, as you know, my bill is the issuing citation, possession of marijuana, and certain traffic infractions. What this bill does, it makes traffic offenses secondary offenses. And in the bill, no citation for a violation of this section shall be issued unless the officer issuing such citation has cause to stop or arrest the person for the violation of some other provisions of this code. No law enforcement officer, as defined in 9.1-101, may lawfully search or seize any person, place, or thing solely on the basis of the odor of marijuana, and no evidence discovered or obtained as a result of such an unlawful search or seizure shall be admissible in a trial, hearing, or other procedure. No citation for a violation of this provision of this section requiring the illumination of license plates with a white light shall be issued unless the officer issuing such citation has cause to stop or arrest the driver or such motor vehicle for the violation of some other provisions of this code or local ordinance relating to the operation, ownership, or maintenance of a motor vehicle or any criminal statute. Also, no citation for a violation of the provision of this section requiring the prevention of excessive or unusual levels of noise shall be issued unless the officer issuing such citation has cause to stop or arrest the driver or such motor vehicle for the violation of some other provisions of this code or local ordinance relating to the operation, ownership, or maintenance of a motor vehicle or any criminal statute. Mr. Chairman, we do need an amendment to this bill to exempt airports, and I will turn to my colleague, Senator Serval, for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Serval.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to the first, or I guess the second code section, Bill 18.2250.1, which is the possession of marijuana statute, I think it actually requires, we need to have two amendments to that. Number one is that the language in lines 63 and 68 need to apply outside of an airport, because right now, the way it's worded, I believe that this would prohibit a drug dog sniff of luggage or create a problem if we had a positive hit on a drug dog sniffing a piece of luggage in an airport. I talked with Mr. Benjamin and Mr. Quagliato about that, although I don't think we actually prepared language for that. And then the second piece, Your Honor, which I think we probably also need an amendment on, I'm sorry I don't have language for either, but perhaps council can agree or not or disagree with me, but I believe the way the statute is currently written, if somebody is smoking marijuana right in front of a police officer, this bill might prohibit them from being arrested for that. And we need to make clear that if somebody is actively committing the offense, that wouldn't be impaired, a charge for that wouldn't be impaired by the statute. I might be wrong about the second one. So if council could weigh in on that, that might be helpful.
Council, do we have any
Mr.
recommendation?
Chairman, I think that Senator Serval is not correct about the second one. If an officer sees someone smoking, then his actions would be not based solely on the odor of marijuana. So I don't think that's a concern.
Okay. Is there a recommended language?
Mr. Chairman, then I would move that we amend to exempt airports from lines 63 through 68 somehow, and maybe council could, if we could approve that in concept, council could come up with the language.
I second that amendment.
Chairman, that can be easily done, sure.
Second.
That motion that we adopt the line amendment by concept has been moved and seconded. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, to council?
This is a friendly suggestion, a technical amendment for the patron. Oftentimes, many of these traffic infractions are cited as a violation of 46.2-1003, which prohibits the use of defective equipment on a vehicle. And my suggestion to the patron would be adding that section in the same way that the taillight section and the exhaust section has been added.
Okay, is there a motion that we adopt the council's recommendation?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
It's been moved and seconded by Senator Serval that we adopt that line amendment. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you.
And finally, Mr. Chairman, if I may point something out for the committee.
Yes, please.
The language that is added to many of these sections provides that no citation for a violation of that section may be made unless the officer has reason to stop or arrest the driver for some other violation. I just want to make sure that, and I don't mean any harm to the bill, but I want to make sure that the committee and the patron understands that an officer may still stop a vehicle for any one of these reasons. He simply cannot issue a citation. So if an officer sees that a license plate is not properly illuminated, he may still stop the vehicle and point that out to the driver, but may not issue a citation. And I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that. This
Understood.
does not prohibit okay, very good.
Okay. We have the bill in front of us. Is there a motion that we report the bill as amended and to re-refer to finance?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Second, been
Mr.
moved
Chairman,
and seconded.
Finance requested the bill?
Senator Serval.
Mr. Chairman, has Finance actually requested the bill? Because it doesn't create any new infractions, and it just...
Senator Lucas, does Finance want the bill?
No, sir, there was no request to send it to Finance. And I'm
Okay. So
looking at the committee clerk, and he said, no, there's no request by Finance.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator who?
Morrissey.
Senator,
This question is for the
Morrissey.
patron or for Senator Serval. I'm just wondering, what if, and as a follow-up to Steve Benjamin's suggestion, if the vehicle is stopped for one of these violations, does this bill allow the officer to ask the driver for consent to search the vehicle? And if that consent is provided and there is marijuana or drugs or gun found, is that admissible?
Mr. Chairman, the answer is yes.
Senator Counsel.
The answer is yes.
All right. Further question. Mr. Chairman, further question.
Yes, Senator Morrissey.
I would ask Senator Lucas, does that give you reason to pause? Because I can see a scenario where somebody is stopped for one of these minor violations. The officer asks the person for consent to search the vehicle, and the person feels, intimidated or otherwise, and grants consent. Does that give you pause?
Are you asking me or Mr. Benjamin?
Counsel?
The patron or Senator Serval or anybody else on the
I
committee?
will say this, Mr. Chairman, in response to Senator Morrissey's question, it does not give me pause because I think that the bill, as introduced, accomplishes some very important things. The practice of an officer stopping a vehicle for an equipment violation and then furthering an investigation by asking for consent to search, sure, that gives me pause, but I think that's an issue for another bill at another time.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Benjamin.
Thank you, Mr. Benjamin.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman. Stanley.
Senator Stanley.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question probably better suited for Senator Surville. This bill does not remove primary offenses such as texting while driving, driving with a handheld phone in your hand, or the primary offense that we've now made for car seats, correct?
Mr. Chairman, I would say he's correct.
Mr. Chairman, just follow-up question.
Senator Stanley.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd ask to Senator Surville, then would it not be in my best interest as an attorney to advise my clients that if they want to ride around without a car seat, or if they want to ride around using their cell phone not hands-free, that they should now darken their windows to a tint level that they can't be seen doing it, so they don't get pulled over?
Mr.
We don't
Chairman, I
accept
can
rhetorical
answer that.
questions.
Just saying, okay?
Okay.
I won't be here for session. I'm getting my windows tinted so I can use my phone with my hands. I just want to make sure that's clear.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Searle.
I would also suggest to Senator Stanley that if his clients want to smoke marijuana in their car actively, they can tint their windows as well and probably be okay.
Okay. Any serious questions?
That's awesome.
Any serious questions? We do have a couple of people. Let's see. Do you want to speak? Is that right? On Senate Bill 5029. And that is, let's see, Dylan Bishop. Is that right?
Hi, Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
No, speak up.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Dylan Bishop. I'm speaking on behalf of the Virginia Law Enforcement Sheriffs Association, and we oppose this bill.
Thank you. Charles Bowling.
They aren't on the line, Senator. They're not on the line, Senator.
Okay, Charles Bowling's not on the line. Is anybody else would like to speak from the public about the bill one way or the other? Okay. We have a motion. The motion is to report the amended bill. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the amended bill be reported. Please call the roll.
Senator Saslow. Senator Norment. Senator Lucas.
Aye.
Senator Obenshain. Senator McDougal. Senator Stewart. Senator Stanley. Senator Chafin. Senator Deeds. Senator Peterson. Senator Serville. Senator McClellan. Senator Boysko.
Aye.
Senator Morrissey. Senator Edwards. 9 ayes, 6 nays.
9-6, the motion carries. Okay, moving on, Senate Bill 5033, Senator Surville's bill, Court Authority in Criminal Cases, Prosecutorial Discretion to Dispose of a Criminal Case. Senator Surville.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, first of all, lines 21 through 41 should be mostly familiar to you all. That was the deferred disposition bill that we passed last year with 2 changes. One change is that it removes the ability of a court to impose a deferred disposition over the objection of the Commonwealth Attorney. The way this bill is written, a deferred disposition like this can only happen with the consent of the Commonwealth. The second change is that, the second change is a line amendment that I have, which I'll get to in a second. The first part of the bill, lines 14 through 20, make clear when a Commonwealth Attorney can drop a case. As the committee, I think, knows, there's been issues about the courts prohibiting Commonwealth Attorneys from dropping cases in both Arlington and Norfolk. This just makes clear when a prosecutor can drop a case. And Mr. Chairman, I have, I believe, 2 line amendments that Mr. Quagliato has prepared. If I could offer those, move those.
Okay.
I think.
Charles, Do you have a line amendment?
Mr. Chair, I did it as a substitute, but basically the line amendments are in the 19.2, 265.3 section. It currently says good cause means, and it would be striking means and substituting includes. And then the second line amendment just relocates some language in the 19.2, 298.02 section. Basically that there is some language saying with the agreement of the defendant in the Commonwealth, and moving it from the after the other appropriate factors to moving it up further up. So the sentence would now read a trial court presiding in a criminal case may, with the agreement of the defendant and the Commonwealth, and then it just follows again. And that language was taken out from where it was in the introduced version. The substitute should be online for everyone to look at.
Is the substitute online? Should be online. Okay, is there a motion that we...
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Senator Serval.
Sorry, I'm not seeing the substitute yet, but I believe there was one other change as well in the substitute, which is that it would also allow the Commonwealth and the defendant to agree that upon completion of the deferred disposition, a charge could be expunged as part of an agreement.
Right, that's correct, Mr. Chairman. And that is, there's a new subsection D. The substitute should be coming up shortly. But the new substitute D basically reads, upon agreement of all parties, a charge that is dismissed pursuant to this section may be considered as otherwise dismissed for purposes of expungement of police and court records in accordance with Section 19.2, 392.2, and such agreement of all parties and expungement eligibility shall be indicated in the final.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Serval.
Thank you. And again, nothing in this 19.2, 298.2 section would happen without the concurrence of the Commonwealth Attorney. And so, having said that, Mr. Chairman, this bill mostly, as it exists, passed the body unanimously last year. I would hope we would act upon it favorably. And I so move those I so move the substitute.
It's been moved, and Senator Deeds seconds the substitute. All in favor of the substitute say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay, the bill's before us.
Mr. Chairman.
Steve Benjamin, counsel.
I only want to point this out, and it may not be appropriate to have a discussion of it now, but going forward, I want the patron and the committee to know that I am not satisfied that this completely addresses the problem that has been described. For example, the prosecutor could move for a null pros, could explain that he's doing it or she's doing it because of the general deterrence value makes the case not in the interests of the Commonwealth to prosecute such a case, but it still leaves the discretion with the trial court to accept that, to make that finding. And so I just earmark that concern in the event that anyone wants future consideration of the problem.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Senator Morsi.
I echo Mr. Benjamin's remarks, and when I was listening to the language earlier, the word may troubled me, and I want to ask the patrons, Senator Serval, are you not also troubled that the discretion, there's still discretion with the court and that it doesn't accomplish your goal, which is to not allow the judiciary to interfere with a decision by the executive branch, the Commonwealth, to null pros a charge?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Serval.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I would just say, first of all, I was trying to keep this bill simple. And as soon as we get into completely rewriting the existing law when it comes to the null process, there is some authority out there that says that it is not good cause to null pros a case due to the unavailability of a witness. And so by restricting court discretion, I was concerned that we might be eliminating some arguments that are out there. There's also the issue of prosecutorial misconduct, whereas sometimes a prosecutor could, for example, threaten to drop a case and then re-indict and bring it as a more serious case if they're not happy about the way a defendant is reacting to a plea offer or what's going on in court. And it starts to get into a lot of those issues, and I didn't want to wade into that thicket with this bill. I was just trying to keep this bill fairly simple to make it clear that if a Commonwealth attorney in looking at a series of cases based on their own local standards thought that certain cases shouldn't be priorities, that they should be able to drop those without a court making invading that decision. So that was why I kept it limited, and it seems to me the broader discussion is probably for another day.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Morrissey.
I'll defer to the senator, but here's my thoughts, and I'll give you an analogy that really bothered me, and it was a federal matter involving Michael Flynn and his case in federal court where the United States government and the defense wanted to dismiss charges against him, and it troubled me that another branch of the government, the judiciary, had the ability to override an executive branch's decision. And I'm just suggesting that this may be the wicket that you want to wade into and do it not necessarily right now here, but I think Mr. Benjamin raises an important concern that at the end of the day, if we're still giving the judiciary the power to veto a decision that the Commonwealth makes, either by itself or in conjunction with the defense attorney, that we haven't done all that I know the spirit of your legislation wants to accomplish. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, where are we?
Mr. Chairman, I moved, as Finance requested the bill, Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman,
I don't believe so.
Staff says it is not, so therefore I move to report the bill.
Right. Finance not requested. All right, it's been moved by Senator Shervill and seconded by Senator Morrissey that the bill be reported. Please call the roll. It's the substitute be reported. Please call the roll.
Senator Saslaw. Senator Norment. Senator Lucas.
Aye.
Senator Obenshain. Senator McDougall. Pass. Senator Stewart. Senator Stanley. Senator Chafin. Senator Deeds. Senator Peterson. Senator Sturville. Senator McClellan. Senator Boysko.
Aye.
Senator Morrissey. Senator Edwards. Senator McDougall. Twelve ayes, 2 nays, 1 abstention.
Okay, the substitute is reported 12-2 and 2. 12-2 and 2, is that right? 12-2 and 1.
1 abstention.
12-2 and 1. Okay. Thank you very much. Now let's move on to Delegate McPike. Senator McPike has a bill that's related to Senator McClellan's bill. It's Senate Bill 5038 and Senate Bills 5084. Senator McPike, would you like to go first?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Senate Bill 5038 has a framework to create a crisis intervention team and mobile crisis co-response team. And the purpose is to align and provide a framework of both mental health service providers, registered peer recovery specialists, and law enforcement officers as a team. As many of you know, many of the more difficult encounters involve those that are going through a behavioral and mental health crisis within the context of our communities. Some of those have had fairly significant negative results. Being in the fire service over the last 20 years, I can tell you that the officers on the street also will tell you that they're not equipped with the specialty needs that the behavioral health and mental health service providers can provide. This is a much needed special framework where we can pair up both CIT trained officers with the appropriate level of professional mental health service And I think this is one of the key things that we need to look at and provide a framework in conjunction with DCJS, the Department of Aging and Rehabilitative Services, as well as Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services, as creating a framework across the state. Now, there are several areas and CSBs that are starting to explore, including my locality of Prince William County, that have funded several positions to start this program. They did a pilot with very positive results. So I think this is an important framework that Virginia get a lot of the collaborative stakeholders together to ensure the appropriate level of response where we have a 911 call in and the individual may or has suspected to be having a mental or behavioral health issue. And frankly, it goes a long way to providing a number of different things that I think are important, both reducing the incarceration, getting the immediate help to those who are facing such crisis, reducing potential injuries to law enforcement officers, reducing downtime that officers also have to wait as officers spend time out of service waiting for assessments and disposition. It really is getting the resources to the right place for the right reason. And I think this is a critical framework that helps put this in place. There are a number of different things that I think this will do, and frankly, it's getting the collaboration and reports and framework in place and establishing really the baseline as we look to expand this type of program around the Commonwealth. This bill does not provide a locality mandate at this point, but it does really get the ball rolling, realizing that funding is tight. But I think this is an important framework and an initiative on a much needed framework for Virginia. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer questions or also yield, if you'd like, Mr. Chairman, to my colleague, Senator McClellan, on Senate Bill 5084.
Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are a couple of major differences between my bill and Senator McPike's. The first is that my bill would be known as the Marcus David Peters Act, and that is because this is a bill that is being put in at the request of the family of Marcus David Lamar Peters. And this is the version that they have worked very hard on since Mr. Peters' death in 2018. And Mr. Peters was the son of Barbara and Jerry Peters, the brother of 11 loving siblings, including Princess Blanding, who you heard from today on an earlier bill and will be speaking to this one, his uncle Jeffrey Peters. For those who knew and loved Marcus, they also knew his bright and beautiful spirit and loving kindness. He graduated from VCU and taught high school biology with plans to start a mentorship program for at-use children. Marcus believed all students had the potential and ability to succeed in life with the proper support and resources. On May 14th, 2018, Marcus taught a full day of biology classes and drove home. None of his family, co-workers, or friends could have imagined that this was the last time they would see him. Marcus experienced a mental health crisis, and when he needed help, de-escalation, and crisis stabilization services, what happened instead was that Marcus, a young 24-year-old black man, was shot by a police officer on the side of the highway, unclothed and clearly in crisis. Marcus needed help, not death, but the system and structure that we have in place today failed Marcus, his family, and our entire community. And we can do something to fix it. Imagine if your child needed help and instead got death. To keep this from happening again, Marcus's family has worked tirelessly since his death, advocating for reform so that those experiencing a mental health crisis are responded to with the care and services they need by trained professionals as the first responders. So this bill has been introduced in honor of Marcus David Lamar Peters to create the Marcus Alert System, a system that will communicate to response teams that an individual is experiencing a mental health crisis and needs the help and support of a community care team who will be led by mental health professionals. This bill will improve the way policing interacts with mental health crises statewide to prevent another family from suffering the same pain as Marcus's family. For many, the very act of police appearing on the scene in the middle of a crisis is escalating, and the Marcus Alert and Community Care Team response provides for a system where a person could receive care in the right place, in the right time, by the right trained professionals. And so the major differences between the two, in addition to the name, is that this bill not only sets the framework in place like Senator McPike's, but it does create a mandate that by January 1st, 2022, every locality would either establish a Marcus Alert or join with another locality to do so. And I would say that setting a mandate with time in place to meet the mandate sets the goal for a system we all need. That's how we got the 911 alert system to begin with. We set a mandate and we gave time for the localities to establish it. Those are the major differences. There are some other differences that Senator McPike has agreed to incorporate that Charles can walk through if the committee has questions. I'm not sure if we have amendments now or if we need to do a floor substitute to incorporate those, but that is the bill. And I would ask that we allow Princess Blanding to speak on behalf of this bill.
Yeah, we do have several people who would like to speak, and like to start with Princess Blanding. Princess Blanding here.
Yes, thank you. I'm here. There was a little bit of a delay in connecting me. So I would like to first thank you, Senator Jennifer McCullen, for working so closely with my family and other community organizers and supporters to get the Marcus Alert bill right. As Senator McCullen said, my brother Marcus David Peters was a loving, amazing Black man who served as a biology teacher at the same school that I was assistant principal at. I was the last family member to see my brother alive. Marcus was not only a member of a very large family, being the third youngest, he served as a mentor to many of our young people. Marcus graduated from VCU with his bachelor's degree in biology with minors in chemistry, psychology, and Spanish. And Marcus's unjust murder during the time that he was completely unarmed, undressed, and experiencing a mental health crisis, as evident by his very atypical behaviors, is another strong indicator that, again, his skin, the pigmentation of his skin was automatically demonized. I also think about my students who have disabilities such as autism and say, how would a child with autism who is triggered by loud noises, or proximity, or has other sensory, issues, how would it end for them as well? The Marcus Alert system will never bring my brother Marcus David Peters back. However, it will ensure that people who are experiencing a mental health crisis or a suspected mental health crisis, as evident by quote unquote atypical behaviors, that they receive help and not incarceration, that they receive help and not death. I strongly would appreciate and urge every last board member, every last senator to vote for the Marcus Alert bill. As again, Marcus David Peters needed help, not death. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There are a number of other speakers. Jennifer Faison is here to speak against the bill, I believe.
Yes, confirming you all can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I want to just very quickly make it clear that there were only three choices when you register to speak, and that's support, oppose, or neutral. And I want to make it clear that the association supports the goals of both of these pieces of legislation, and that we agree that people who are struggling with behavioral health crises really need the opportunity to have reduced law enforcement involvement in their cases to the extent possible. We need to ensure that the incidence of arrest is reduced, and we need to reduce injuries. And most importantly, I'm in agreement that we need to make sure that we're connecting to people to treatment, and not to that we have with the bill is a difference of degree and not a difference of supporting the overall objectives of the bill. And so we certainly would join together in wanting to meet the goals. I think with specific regard to Senator McClellan's bill, and to some degree Senator McPike's bill, we have some concerns that in order to meet the goals in the bill, it suggests that there's only one model that's appropriate for the entire state to do that, and that's a co-response model. Even just saying a co-response model, if you look at the literature, that can describe a number of different things. It can describe clinician officer teams that ride together in the same police car. It can describe teams in which the officer and the clinician arrive at the same scene separately. It can describe teams whose clinicians respond remotely with the officer via telehealth support. And so we just think that there are certainly other models that would be appropriate in communities to address the goals of the bill. And essentially what Senator McClellan's bill would do is kind of set up a statewide pilot almost, in that one of the provisions of the bill states that we would go back and see, do the data demonstrate that we're meeting the objectives with this program. And so I just wanted to go on to say that members of this body will recall that the CSBs, in conjunction with DBHDS and with funding from the General Assembly, are in the process of implementing STEP Virginia. And one of the steps in that overall initiative involves the development of a crisis call center, and that would dispatch mobile crisis teams when the case was triaged and deemed appropriate for avoiding law enforcement contact, and would send out a pair of clinicians to that scene. And so, the co-response model is one way of achieving the objectives, but I would submit to you that with the implementation of mobile crisis, we have a model that could be appropriate as well. And in addition, this body is heavily invested in CIT over the years. And in fact, the CIT programs are reported on each year, but they're under significant review at present, with a report due to you all in the fall. And it may be that, the combination of STEP Virginia and expanding upon our CIT models might help to meet the objectives in the bill and those that I stated earlier. The other thing I just want to say is there's good news in the Commonwealth, and that is that there are a number of CSBs who are already either implementing some sort of co-response model or they're planning it. And those areas that have endeavored to do so have done so as a result of very careful community planning efforts. And I don't know that we would want to create a situation where the current model that was put in place with community planning is disrupted by a substitute model. And in fact, in one case, we have a model that is being implemented with federal funds. So they would not actually be able at this point to change what they're doing.
Mr. Chairman.
And this would set up a scenario where they would have
Senator Peterson.
Senator
Serval.
Thank you, Mr. I'm sort of getting lost about where we are, but it strikes me that the committee needs to make a policy choice as to whether or not we're going to have local option or whether or not we're going to have a mandate. And at least I'm of the personal opinion that doing a mandate in this special session on all of our local 130 or 40 local governments is kind of a big step to take. And so at least to try and move this discussion along and focus it a bit, I would make a motion that we incorporate Senator McClellan's bill into Senator McPike's bill and see if the committee will adopt that. And then if that happens, I think I might have a further motion about those amendments that Senator McPike or McClellan, one of them, was mentioning.
Okay, there's a motion been made that we roll Senator McClellan's bill into Senator McPike's bill, and it's been seconded by Senator
Second.
Deeds. Is there any discussion? All in favor of that motion, vote aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Vote no. Motion carries. Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Senator Serval.
Thank you. Senator McPike just informed me he'd prefer to make those amendments in finance, which I don't have a problem with. So I don't know if there's any further public testimony, but having said that, I would move to report the bill and refer it to finance.
There is a lot more. If the last speaker, are you finished? We have a lot of people would like to say something on the bill. I'd like to give each one 1 minute, if that's okay. Luis Aguilar, in favor of the bill. Would you like to, got 1 minute?
Yes, good morning, members of the committee and chair of the committee. I'm Luis Angel Aguilar, Casas Virginia director, and today I speak on behalf of our 10,000 members. We're a community-based organization fighting for justice and equity. First of all, I want to acknowledge the Black Lives Matter movement that has brought us the momentum for real positive change to happen, as well as Marcus's family. We strongly urge you to consider this legislation because in 2017, our community in Prince William County suffered the loss of Ruben Urbina, a 15-year-old, to 2 gunshots by a police officer. Ruben had shown signs of distress the day before, and the fact that his life was taken away by 2 bullets to the chest by a police officer is a sign that the system is now working. We met with the chief of police back then, now retired Chief Barry Barnard, and he mentioned how the training of a police automatically trains police officers to shoot if they feel the need based on a threat. They will use this type of force. The Prince William County Commonwealth Attorney, Paul Evert, closed the case not more than 2 days later. As you imagine, this is completely unacceptable. We asked Virginia to do better. We asked the committee to consider this story and to change how we police our communities, especially Black and brown communities. We at CASA, we ask you to support SB 5038 by Senator McPike and SB 5084 by Senator McClellan, especially given the rise of mental health challenges that people are experiencing during COVID-19. Mobile responses similar to the CAHOOTS program in Eugene, Oregon, can save lives by focusing on mental health and homelessness rather than criminalizing community members. We ask you to bring justice to the families across the Commonwealth. We ask you to bring justice to Ruben. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, 1 minute apiece. Maria Signer. Maria.
They are not on the line, Senator.
Is Maria here?
They are not on the line.
Okay. Oscar Urbana. Here? Oscar Urbana. 1 minute.
Oscar, if you could unmute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yes, thank you for allowing me to speak. In September 27, 2017, my child needed help and he was killed and shot in 1 or 2 minutes upon the police arrival. I'm calling today because we need I need y'all's help to help save lives. There's a program already in Eugene, Oregon that has been working successfully for 31 years. So I don't see any reason for not having it right here in Virginia and save lives now. When my kid was murdered, what many people don't know is he wasn't just murdered, but my whole family now. I lost my wife, my older son, and myself. We lost each other. So when a member of the family is wiped off, the whole family is. And I don't know if people read the news, this and that, but it's really the devastation in never ends. So I at least beg you if you could somehow think of your own children if this has happened to you, where it could have been prevented. So now, pretty much the familia Urbina, we have no life anymore. So please help us implement these programs, which it has the potential to save many, many, many lives. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Rob Pogan-Kloss. Rob Pogan-Kloss.
Not on the line, Senator.
Kalia Harris. Kalia Harris.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Kalia Harris. I am a resident in North Chesterfield, Virginia. I want to thank all of the amazing legislators, Delegate Hashmi, as well as McClellan, for coming forward with this legislation for police reform. As you may know, in Richmond, we've been in the streets for about 83 days calling for a Marcus alert. We need this in our state. It's not something that we just need in Richmond. We need it throughout Virginia to save lives. I was a resident of Fairfax County for 7 years, where we fought for justice for Natasha McKenna, who was also tased to death by the Fairfax County Police whilst she had schizophrenia. And so when we talk about mental health and policing, we need to separate the response from just having police, and you all have the power to do that here today. So I urge you to listen to the families and the voices of the people who are asking you to please pass this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ashley Arrington, 1 minute. Ashley Arrington.
They are not on the line, Senator.
Okay. Anybody else? I don't think
That's
so.
all of them, Senator.
Okay. We have a motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Serval.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would withdraw my motion and I think defer to Senator McClellan, who has a quick motion to amend, which shouldn't be a problem.
Okay. Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I make my motion, Kelly Harris Braxton from Virginia First Cities, who was unable to get on the line, asked me to inform the body that they do support the bill. And Senator McPike and I will be working on incorporating some of the specific other differences we haven't gone on the bill when it goes to finance, where he's agreed to take them in. But there's one we want to do here now, and I would move that the third enactment clause from Senate Bill 5084, which is found on line 378, that says this act shall be referred to as the Marcus David Peters Act. I move that we make that amendment now to Senator McPike's bill, and then we'll make the other ones later.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the enactment clause, the third enactment clause that was discussed, be adopted as part of the bill. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Senator Serval.
Then I renew my motion. The bill be reported as amended to finance.
All right, it's been moved, and Senator Deeds seconds that the substitute bill be, or the bill is amended, be reported and referred to finance. Please call the roll.
Senator Saslow. Senator Norman. Senator Lucas.
Aye.
Senator Obenchain. Senator McDougal. Senator Stewart. Senator Stanley. Senator Chafin. Sorry, Senator Chafin. Thank you. Senator Deeds. Senator Peterson. Senator Serval. Senator McClellan. Senator Boysko.
Aye.
Senator Morrissey.
Aye.
Senator Edwards.
Aye.
Senator Norman. Senator McDougal. Abstain. Thank you. 12 ayes, 1 nay, 1 abstention.
The motion passes 12, 1, and 1. Thank you very much. This time, I'd like to move on to Senator Evans' bill, Senate Bill 540. If you can give us a number of minutes, we might even be able to clear the docket in about 20 minutes or so. Let's see. Senator Evans, Senate Bill 540.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has to do with a circumstance where a local police officer is accused of a felony under Chapter 4, including murder, assault, strangulation, or sexual assault. And it comes at the request of our Commonwealth's attorney in Alexandria City, Brian Porter, who I believe may be on the line. It would allow the Attorney General, when requested by the local Commonwealth's attorney, to act as a local prosecutor in the case of those felonies. In the case of Minnesota, some people may have heard that the police officer who was accused of murder by standing or kneeling on the neck of George Floyd is being prosecuted by the state attorney general, Keith Ellison. That would not be allowable in Virginia currently. And there's a perception in a lot of cases that and perhaps accurately, that because the local offenses by a local police officer would be investigated in many cases by the local police department, but their contemporaries or the Commonwealth's attorney, that the not just transparency, but that it may not, the public needs to have an assurance that people are getting examined fairly. And the public trust in local prosecution in that kind of case can be undermined. So that's the bill. It's a fairly short bill, and the operative language is on lines 39 through 41. And again, it's optional. It's not mandatory. I mean, I'd love to have that, but we don't have the funds right now to dedicate an entire office to that. This would allow the Attorney General to do it when there's an agreement.
Okay. Any just questions of the patron?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Stewart.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask the senator from Alexandria, what's wrong with the current practice of bringing in a special prosecutor from another jurisdiction across the state that has particular expertise in prosecuting these sorts of crimes versus the Attorney General, who I'm not aware their office has any expertise in prosecuting these sorts of things?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because there was one circumstance where a Commonwealth's attorney in an unjustified shooting, which occurred in Lynchburg, was prosecuted by attorneys general from another jurisdiction, which did result in officers losing their jobs and being civilly liable for $12 million in damages and being prosecuted. However, it's hard for that other Commonwealth's attorney's office, harder for them to investigate and prosecute. It's a lot of resources for them, and I think it makes more sense to have it centralized.
I might point out that the Attorney General also does have the authority to bring in independent attorneys to do this, as well as the local Commonwealth attorneys, so they could do both, I think. I'm pretty sure.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Senator
Stewart. It's still me.
Stewart.
Mr. Chairman, my understanding is, and I actually did this for a little while, but if a prosecutor has a conflict and they say they have a conflict, then they turn it over to the court, and the court actually enters an order determining who that special prosecutor might be. How would this jive with that judicial authority?
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Senator who? Morrissey? Senator Sherville?
Let me try to address Senator Stewart's question.
Senator Morrissey.
Often what happens is that the prosecutor will recommend to the circuit court what prosecutor in a sister jurisdiction they want to investigate it. So while it appears that the court actually enters the order and there is some independence, not necessarily so.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator, who's that? Sherville?
Obenshain.
Senator Obenshain.
Mr. Chairman, I just wonder whether the object of the patron is being accomplished here, because, what the current practice is, as Senator Stewart pointed out, is that if there's a conflict, if it's a Commonwealth attorney called upon to prosecute and investigate police officers in their jurisdiction, they hand it over completely to somebody from a different jurisdiction, somebody who is independent. And what this is doing is allowing that prosecutor with a conflict, that prosecutor from that same jurisdiction, to continue that prosecution, to make the strategic and tactical decisions in that prosecution and simply have the Attorney General in to give it the impression that there's an air of neutrality about it when, in fact, that's not the case. So I just wonder whether this is a concept that is ready for prime time and maybe does the opposite of what the patron really wants to do.
I'm going to...
Any further comments?
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Eben.
I'm just going to defer to my witness to answer that question about that. But I do want to point out in response to the previous question from Senator Stewart that this really does put a severe strain on the office that travels long periods of time on a case and puts them at a disadvantage of not having the abundant resources to draw from, which the Office of the Attorney General can have.
We have a speaker, Brian Porter. Is he here? Brian Porter?
Thank you. I'm here, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the...
Yes,
the
please speak up.
Just to answer a couple of questions that were posed by other senators, Mr. Chair, I have served as a special prosecutor for officer-involved shooting in a different jurisdiction, and one of the real problems for me as a Commonwealth attorney was the amount of resources that needed to be dedicated to that case in a different jurisdiction. I was asked to handle a case. It required me to travel. I was not in a position where I could take additional resources from my office to help me investigate that case. And to be honest, the distance and the fact that it was outside of my normal sphere of responsibility here in the city made that task difficult, although I was able to accomplish it. So the goal here, when I spoke to Senator Eben about this bill, was to provide just a different avenue by which a larger office, which does have trial attorneys, the Attorney General's office could, not mandated, but could, upon request, take over the prosecution. To answer Senator Obenshain's question, that's the goal, at least that's the goal I have, is to allow us to, on occasion, have the Attorney General's office serve as a special prosecutor, as opposed to getting another Commonwealth Attorney's office, which may have stretched resources to handle it. And of course, the overarching goal is to have a similar situation as we had in Minnesota, so that in certain cases, the Attorney General's office could take over that prosecution. So those are my answers to the questions. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the panel.
Any
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Senator Morrissey.
Before we pass by Senator Obenshain's comment, I think he might be onto something if it's... I'm an umpire. I call it the way I see it. No, I'd like a comment from the patron. But if this is a situation where the local prosecutor continues to handle it and he's simply getting guidance from the Attorney General, and then we may not have the independence that the patron is seeking. So I'd like you to address that, and I've been trying to look in the bill to find that exact portion where it says that the local prosecutor continues to handle the prosecution albeit with guidance from the AG.
Senator Eben.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that the lines 39 to 41 are the entirety of the bill, that the Attorney General has, if you go up to the top, the Attorney General does not have any of the authority to institute or conduct criminal prosecutions in circuit court. And then the new language says, except for these circumstances, and then line 39, with the concurrence, if the local attorney for the Commonwealth allows, violations for felony offenses set forth under Chapter 4. So they can actually institute and conduct the criminal prosecution. It can be turned over to them, not just guidance on it.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Obenshain.
Just in order to move this along, I would respectfully submit that maybe this needs a little bit more time, and I would move to pass the bill by indefinitely.
Been moved and seconded that the bill be passed by indefinitely. I have a question to the patron or somebody. Has the Attorney General weighed in on this at all?
Yeah, and I neglected
What's that?
to say we developed the bill with the Office of the Attorney General, who they do support it.
Okay. Well, it's been moved and seconded that the bill be PBI'd, passed by indefinitely. Call the roll, please.
Senator Saslaw.
What are we voting?
Senator Norman. Senator Lucas.
No.
Senator Obenchain. Senator McDougal. Senator Stewart. Senator Stanley. Senator Chafin. Senator Chafin. Senator Deeds. Senator Peterson. Senator Serval. Senator McClellan. Senator McClellan. Senator Boysko.
Aye.
Senator Morrissey. I'm sorry, Senator Morrissey. Senator Edwards.
No to PBI.
11 ayes, 3 nays.
All right, the motion has been PBI'd 11 to 4. Is that right? Okay. At this time, without any further, we're going to recess this committee meeting till after the general session, which will start here in a minute. And before I do that, I want to apologize to Maria Jankowski and Andy Elders, who wanted to speak in favor of Senate Bill 5033 that was passed. They should be happy with what happened, but I apologize for not giving them an opportunity to speak. I think I overlooked that. Meanwhile, at this time, if without any objection, we will recess the Judiciary Committee meeting. We'll then go into the general session and come back after the Senate is adjourned this afternoon, probably 15 minutes after the Senate is adjourned, if that's okay. We'll come back again 15 minutes after the Senate is adjourned and finish up the docket. I think we could probably get rid of the docket, at least so far, this afternoon. Thank you. Without objection, we'll recess.